Well, Nathan, welcome to episode one of Automated Brand, the number one, well, soon to be number one, podcast focused on using AI to build your e-commerce brand. We'll talk about things outside of e-commerce brands for sure, but how are you doing today, Nathan?
I am good. I'm excited for episode one. A great beginning of being able to help brands understand very practically how the heck do you actually use AI to automate what you're doing across the board. So
100%.
I'm excited.
Yeah, same. And you've been traveling a lot lately. You've done a couple conferences lately. Uh, yeah, do you want to give like a TLDR on that? Because I think it's pretty cool. Because those were very like AI focused. Like, what was your takeaway? Like, what are you seeing in the industry right now?
Yeah, it was really interesting. I mean, so I was honored to be invited to kind of come out and speak at two different recent conferences at Commerce Roundtable and E-commerce Catalyst in Utah. And both were actually driven by the organizers saying that like the number one, or number two topic that every single brand was asking about is AI. Like, and it makes sense, right? I mean, it's such a constant topic with ChatGPT, or I should say OpenAI constantly releasing things, Anthropic releasing things, Gemini, and so on. But part of what I found while talking with a bunch of awesome brand owners, operators, and everything else there is there's also just like this big lack of understanding in terms of how much of this stuff is hype, or versus how much of this stuff is actually real. And if it is real, like how do you go about actually using any of this to like make your brand perform better, right? Whether that's getting more ads out the door to avoid creative bottlenecks, running emails better, operating your, the business better, improving OpEx, shipping, any of that sort of stuff. So I'd say that's one thing where honestly going into it, I wasn't sure, frankly, how much people cared about AI, which probably sounds,
Yep.
strange maybe to some, but at those conferences, everybody wanted to talk about AI and how to use it and how to better understand it. So,
Yeah, and I think like we come at it from a different approach, or maybe a approach is wrong. There's a lot of people out there that will just hype it up as if like AI is going to take over the world, right? But there's some realistic nature to like AI that I think it's kind of tough for people to kind of wrap their head around, because on social media they're saying, "Man, this is the greatest thing ever," but then in reality, sometimes they run it and it's like, this isn't the greatest thing. Because a lot of what we spend time thinking about, or I know I spend time thinking about is, how do we use this to like augment our teams rather than like how do we actually take and be able to do more with less rather than just fully replacing the human in the loop here? Just because that's just where AI is right now. So did you guys talk about that out at the conference some too? From that regard?
well, I'd say I did a little bit in the keynotes that I did. I think and you kind of nailed it, but one of the biggest things that I feel like there's probably two things that I kind of debunked most, both in like one-off conversations and then a little bit like, in the keynotes that I did. And one is this idea that brands are very fearful of, like, oh my gosh, AI is just it's gonna replace all these people, right?
Right. Yep.
Or on the other side of it, they're like, no, that's fake news, or they're not necessarily sure what to even believe there. And I think to your point, like what we see on the even on the Railion side, because we use AI internally, quite a lot.
Yep.
And obviously, like we help brands, accelerate a lot of this stuff. Is like there's certain jobs that it's like copywriting, for instance, right? Like it can dramatically reduce the amount of time that somebody needs to take to do copywriting. But like we're just not at a point where somebody shouldn't at least look at the copy that was generated, right? And I think that's where, like, to your point, Adam, it's like it's an augmentation of the team, but today you shouldn't fire half your staff and assume that that AI is going to kind of take care of it all. You still need that pilot is kind of how I described it. And I think one of the biggest sort of even mental model adjustments that I talked about at the conference, with these different brands was basically like AI is kind of like hiring your best employee ever, but you need to think about it in that way, right? It's like hiring an employee and it needs the context of an employee, and you need to be able to work with it, right? With like as an employee. And like, guess what? Like when you have employees, you still need to see what they're doing. You need to approve what they're doing in some cases. And I think, at least a lot of what I've seen, and I think even on like the development side, you've seen similar, where it's like it can produce well, but that doesn't mean that it should just be allowed to run autonomously.
Yeah, and I could give some good like analysis. So my background very much in marketing a lot, but primarily on the technical side. So I'm going to talk a little bit from that angle. There's some amazing times. There's some times that you can actually get like AI just to write some incredible code. There's also times where it'll write code that looks like it works, but it's absolutely garbage. The same thing is true in pretty much any place where you're using AI. You talked a little bit about context engineering or building the context around it. I think there's probably even a lack of understanding of what that even means. So the way I like to think about this, and you can tell me if I'm wrong or you disagree. Really, let's take the latest model that came out, Claude 4.5 or Sonnet 4.5, and we'll get into more of that later. But we've literally tried to embed all of the world's knowledge into this one giant LLM. So you can imagine this big brain that's there with all this knowledge in it. And you're asking it a simple thing like, hey, I need copy for an email. Very little context in there, like whatever it is, like, but you're trying to harness like all of this brute power to do something very specific. Now, it might know about the history of like, it does know about the history of like the entire world and like, everything that you could put into it. So you really do need to kind of like engineer like how you're prompting it and how you're building that context, like really specific to kind of like zone it in. And I would say some of your first messages are the most important. So like your first question, your first thing, that those are going to have higher importance. I don't know. Do you want to add on to that? Like how you think about context engineering and what you're seeing?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you said is spot on, and I covered very similar, like even out at these conferences. And I think, one of the things that you hit on at the end there, I think in a way, like social media, like sensationalizes too much of AI.
Yep.
Because there's so many messages where somebody goes, "Oh my gosh!" Right? Like, look, like I just one shot this entire ad, or I just one shot this video for my brand, or I just one shot this whole app, and that's why SaaS is gonna die. Like, and and that happens sometimes. But to your point, it's like sometimes, like you mentioned, like the first few messages, and like one of the expectations that that we often set with customers of ours, as like, and obviously, like as I was talking with brands at conferences, is like it's a conversation. Again, I think there is this mindset shift of like it is like an employee in a way. It has a context, right? It has in a way like a mind, like some kind of reasoning, and the results of that is like it shouldn't be something where you should expect to be able to go in and say, awesome, well just write a great promotional email and expect it to give you a good result.
Exactly.
Yep. And it's like the same way that even like if you went to an employee that you had and you gave them very little context and you asked them to complete a task, like you probably wouldn't expect them necessarily to nail it, to nail it perfectly. And they might, but like there's going to likely be some back and forth and there's going to be some conversation that has to happen. The same is true for AI.
Yeah, I think that segues us over pretty good to some stuff that's happened recently in the news here. We'll get into like new model releases here in a second, but probably the biggest thing in e-com is some of the updates ChatGPT has rolled out, specifically with being able to do purchases within Chat. I know I have my own opinions on this, but regardless of what those are, this is happening, and it's something we need to be ready for. I don't know. Do you want to give a quick analysis of what this means, like what it is that's actually been announced, what's live now, what's coming, and how you see that kind of playing out? And then I'll kind of give my feedback on that as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think it's really fascinating. I mean, it's something that if you look at Shopify, right, they've sort of been signaling this for a while.
They have, yeah.
With OpenAI, with ChatGPT. So for those that, if you did miss it, basically, ChatGPT now allows, I'd say now allows users to buy directly from the ChatGPT chat. They're starting with Etsy. So if you want to test it, it's really easy. Literally go to your ChatGPT and type in something like, like find, like my wife's birthday is coming up. So you could be like, find a great birthday gift for my wife from Etsy. And it will go to Etsy specifically. It'll find stuff. And then if it's enabled for that product, when you click on it in there, you'll actually be able to see on the right-hand side a thing that says buy, right? So like it's embedded commerce effectively. Now they started with Etsy. They're going to be rolling out Shopify. So if you think about it, there's something like 1.2 million Shopify stores out there today.
Yep.
And now every single one of those stores, probably some permissioning and that sort of thing, but presumably every single one of those stores will have the ability to be able to let their product be purchased straight via ChatGPT. For context, if you look at Google Shopping, right, which is kind of like the closest like proxy here is Google Shopping. And Google Shopping, if I recall, I'll have to actually let me pull up the number here really quick, because to me, because Google Shopping is such a great proxy, I was wondering like what's the actual gross merchandise value that's done on on Google Shopping. Let me see.
Yeah, and while you're doing that, maybe to kind of expand on this a little bit, because I think it's interesting, because there's so many questions I have in my head. One of the first questions is, OpenAI's got to be doing this to make money in some way. So how is this getting monetized? Like, what kind of referral? Is this all a affiliate type network? There's a lot of things that I really want to dig in to kind of understand how they're actually benefiting from this on the back end. And I would say Google is pretty easy to understand because it's been around a while and how Google Shopping works. So anyway, as you pull up the numbers now that you have, cool.
Yep. Yeah. So 800 billion is around the GMV
It's wild.
that goes through Google Shopping. 800 billion. This is part of why, and like this isn't killing e-commerce. Like I think like there's again the sort of sensationalized piece of this, but when you look at Google Shopping, like Google's going to run their own version of this, right? I mean, like they're reinventing search, like as we speak with all the AI search and everything else.
For
We've
sure.
seen the traffic, traffic to sites take a nosedive because of this. As that's changing, like what's clear, right, is that $800 billion figure. Some of it's going to be split between ChatGPT and Google and Perplexity, as they start to do more of this and others. It's going to happen, and it is a different way of shopping. And as a result, it begs sort of a different set of questions of like, how do you even start to show up? Because there's a lot of opportunity here. But I know, Adam, it's interesting. You've got sort of a different take even on like, is this actually even a good thing like societally and for shoppers? Like, I mean, I know we talked about that some, but yeah, what's your take?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's inevitable. I think, if we'd have asked a year ago, we probably saw that this was going to happen. I am a little nervous about this direction overall, and I have been for forever. LLMs in particular they have a mind of their own. And anybody that's used more than one model, they behave very differently. And you have to remember, we're getting recommendations from LLMs that have no practical hands-on like usage of this product. So we're basically, a lot of times right now when I go and I'm looking for something, I go to Amazon, I go to whatever store, I'm looking at reviews, and yeah, say what you want about reviews, they still give you a practical analysis of like, yeah, okay, this person had this experience. I did a query here where I'm asking about a bird feeder, and it very particularly gave me 3 bird feeders, and it gave me one exact recommendation that it thinks I should actually buy. It's just a very interesting paradigm because as an e-commerce brand, how in the world are we going to compete with, like, how do we get our products into ChatGPT? How do we become one of the things that are recommended? Is it like pay to play? Is it you've got to optimize like really highly for it? And then are we as humans going to start relying on that more than actually doing our own research? Are we just going to believe that AI is going to give us the best product recommendation? And then now we get put in a place, so rather than going and like looking on Amazon or doing a Google search, we're just asking ChatGPT, we're getting whatever 3 products they give us, and that's what we go with. It's going to make a very interesting future. And I think we're going to have to pay close attention to how we optimize for those search results and how ChatGPT is actually picking what products it's shown. And then when a new model comes out, let's say they update like GPT-5 to GPT 5.1, that might change all the results again. So I'm in my head, it's crazy. It's inevitable. I think this is where it's going, but I also am a little bit concerned about this direction. Is how we offload our product buying to an AI.
I'm curious, when you think about something like Amazon, and I mean, Amazon they're a platform, and merchants, like brands, merchants, they get frustrated because they're beholden to Amazon, right? And they have to play the game that Amazon wants them to play, and in a way, it's like I don't know if it's better or worse, but like because Amazon just shows the list, like it commoditizes the whole thing, right? Because you're just seeing a bunch of products next to each other without any sort of brand or qualifying criteria, generally speaking, apart from kind of the review rating and everything else. Do you think, like, in Amazon is like, I mean, it's got a hold on the market, right? It's some crazy percentage. I think like 30,
for sure.
Maybe even like
Yep.
60% of all like shopping like starts actually on Amazon, whether it finishes there or not, right? For like from a research standpoint, like, do you think that something like a ChatGPT, like with kind of the recommendations and everything else, or even Google, as I'm sure they reinvent shopping, do you think that like levels the playing field and that actually pull people away from Amazon? Like, do you think that'll be a good thing and that'll happen, or what?
In my head, I think maybe I'm being a little bit too like perfectionist here. So I've actually sold a lot of stuff on Amazon over the years. I've worked with their like fulfillment centers. I put products in there and had that happen. But like working with Amazon, I felt like I had at least control over how my things would actually show up. And I could always very clearly pay to play if I wanted to promote something. It was a very like transparent mechanism. Say what you want, like their fees are crazy, like all that stuff. I agree with you. It's not cool. But now we're offloading all of that stuff to an AI to potentially make those decisions for us. And then is there a pay to play? Is there certain optimization that needs to happen? What kind of revenue share do I actually need to actually give to ChatGPT if I get my referral through there? And then is it going to be variable based on brands? Are they going to have like per brand deals, or, is this going to be through Shopify? Uh, to me, it's just a really tricky thing to kind of offload your purchasing decision to an AI, because you're basically relying on an AI that has no practical usage of this particular item telling you it's the best one. And like I was taking a look at the bird feeder recommended, it isn't even the best reviewed one. So like, you know what I mean? Like, it's very interesting that
Did you buy it or did you not buy it?
I did not buy that bird feeder.
Was that one that you could actually buy through ChatGPT or no?
No, it wasn't, unfortunately. But it did give me like, it gave me 3 products to choose from, and then you click on them, and it basically had like the buying panel where you can go to different stores. I actually think that isn't a reasonable thing, but the ability, the thing where like now they're going to want to push you to things that they can buy, that you can buy through ChatGPT, versus pushing you to Target or Best Buy or wherever they're pushing you. So yeah, I'm very curious to watch it, but it is inevitable. We can dislike it. Like I feel uncomfortable, but I don't think there's much we can do about it, but kind of embrace it and be ready to watch, because I have a feeling it's going to take over a decent amount of the percentage of sales over the next. Somebody's going to be like, hey, I want a birthday present for my wife. It's going to give them 3 recommendations. I'll be like, okay, that one works. I'm just going to buy that. It's just inevitable that's going to happen. I can dislike it and also still accept it. That's the way it's going.
That's true. That's true. I mean, honestly, I think there's some parts of AI today where like that's probably the right approach of, like I feel like historically speed and convenience wins.
Yep.
And like we can dislike aspects of it as much as we want, but at the end of the day, what we see time and again, TikTok Shop is another great example of that, right? Where like it's embedded in like social commerce, right? It's embedded in that experience, and part of why it does really well is because like speed and convenience wins. Uber was a similar example, although obviously a very different market. I do think when I think about ChatGPT embedding commerce, Google likely beginning to do the same thing, down the line, especially because they announced, if people missed it, this was actually kind of a stealth announcement. They announced their their commerce protocol effectively.
I didn't see that
like
one.
in a very similar, so they've got like a new API now that they're working on that allows for the same sort of thing. It's like agentic commerce. So Google is obviously going in that direction. This is where things are going.
For sure.
More embedded commerce. I think from a brand standpoint, like to me, there's 2 really critical things that come from this, right? And it's like one of the best things that I've always heard, from forget who it was now, but like for like a CMO, right? It's like really good CMOs are always looking for acquisition arbitrage, right? In other words, they're always looking for like where is sort of that unique moment for a period of time where they can acquire new customers dramatically less, at a dramatically less cost than where they can acquire it elsewhere. In other words, like Meta right now is like the scale factor is great. Everybody should use Meta, but it's not going to generally be your most cost-effective place to acquire a customer.
Right.
I think we're entering into a period of time where it's going to be like early Meta days, but on ChatGPT and these other sort of AI search tools, where the brands that get in early, the brands that learn to game the system overall, the brands that learn to rank, and the brands that even like, as they roll out ads, that spend the money on ads, like they're going to have a big advantage up front because they're going to be able to acquire those customers at a fraction of the cost. And 2 stats that we've actually seen, I was talking with, like I said, these last 2 conferences with, I think about 5 or 6 different 9-figure brands. All of them said that their conversion rates from a ChatGPT referral was like, I think, what was the exact number? It was something like 10-15% higher. And then their AOV was actually 25 to 30% higher. So it's one of those things too, like to your point, Adam, whether we like it or not, like people are taking this recommendation.
Yep.
They're valuing and trusting the AI. And then like they're also coming in as a result and they're converting faster and they're generally spending more. So I think like if I'm a brand, I don't need to put all your eggs in one basket, but I would be watching it heavily because I imagine there's going to be some very good customer arbitrage opportunity here.
Yeah. To your point, yes, I think there's going to be people that early on figure out how to actually do this thing while it's rolling, and they're going to get an enormous uplift for a period of time before, that gets, I'm trying to think about the right thing. Commoditized is the wrong word, but basically blasted with everyone figuring it out.
Saturated.
Saturated would be the right word. Yep. So anyway, I think that's been probably one of the most interesting things that's happened in the last few days here, last week. But there's also been a few model releases. Have you had a chance to play with Sonnet 4.5? I know that released, I guess technically it released like a day ago. So it's pretty early still on. I guess it'd actually be a day and a half ago at this point with where we're at. We're recording this on October 1st.
Yes, yeah. I've had a chance. I've played with it actually a good bit.
Okay.
I haven't done much on like the development side, but from honestly, I'd say from like a creative standpoint, it is like I can tell the difference, and I'd say that's something like I can't often say, for a model. I'd say when ChatGPT 5 released, I could tell the difference, but it was like negative. Like the creative skills of ChatGPT from like a writing standpoint, or like coming up with creative ideas or things like that, dramatically decreased. Like I literally only use it on thinking mode. But on Sonnet 4.5, that was actually something where, like, whether it's writing emails or ad copy or even like analyzing landing pages. I mean, it's like I use it for, like, we internally use it for a lot of different things, both for like our own kind of go to market and everything else at Rayleon, but obviously it's also like part of our product. And the creative output actually quality is way better to me. It also feels so chatty. Like when I ask it for something, I feel like before I had like a very succinct answer, and now it's like talking to like your crazy uncle that you just want to stop talking, and you're like, look, like I get it. You gave me the answer. I don't need all of this extra stuff. Like, be quiet, uncle. Like I understand. Now the quality is good, but like,
yeah,
so that's kind of what I've seen so far. I don't know how much you've had a chance to play with.
Yeah, I mean, I've used it quite a bit, and I would say it is chattier. One of the things, I know everybody knows this from if they use Sonnet 4, but it basically would give you a bad idea, and you'd be like, that's a terrible idea. Let's go do something else. And they'd be like, yeah, you're absolutely right. That is a terrible idea. That seems to be gone, at least in 4.5. I'm not seeing that so much. It's still
no more glazing. Yeah, it doesn't glaze
glazing.
The same way.
Glazing seems to be at least resolved, or at least a lot better. From a technical side, I think it's a decent step up. It's not significantly a big step up. From the content creation side, I think Sonnet's always just been like on the creative side. I think it does a really good job of kind of taking some of the rules that are in place and the context and building it. And I kind of like some of the chattiness of it because it really depends. It really depends on how you want to work with it. Like, are you wanting to work with it to like just have it go do a thing and come back with an answer? Then GPT-5 is probably going to be like a better thing. But if you want to work with it like as a pair, like teammate, it's really nice. And you could tell it to be a little bit more succinct and like not talk so much. Like, and it'll sometimes listen to that sometimes. But yeah, I kind of like it from that regard. And then from an eval standpoint, I know we ran our marketing evals on Sonnet 4.5, and it was slightly better. Not significant, but it was a little bit of an uptick. I think we went from an 87% to an 89%, which is wild to think about with where when we started, like, it was hard for anything to even crack, 75, 80%. Now we're nearing 90% here on these things. So it just shows that it is improving, at least from instruction following and doing what you tell it to do, which is cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think one of the things that impressed me, and I don't know if they upgraded like their image technology under the hood, not for generation, because you can't use Sonnet 4.5 for generating images. Right. But it's like we have we've got our internal an agent that sort of helps run some of the performance marketing. And one of the things that this agent does is it analyzes ads that we sort of have in there to kind of understand like what are other kind of brands doing. So so we emulate DTC a little bit. What are other SaaS vendors that are say not competitors but like in a similar vein to us. And it's funny when I actually asked it to analyze those ads, it actually did a better job. So it updated its knowledge, and I kind of compared the two. And the quality of sort of what it understood from those ads was a good improvement. So I don't know what they change under the hood in the model, but it's something where, again, like if I'm a brand, historically I've used ChatGPT more for that. But it's probably worth going and even trying it out, of giving it a few different ads and seeing kind of how it analyzes, what those ads look like, what's in them, and then being able to correlate that to performance to suggest new ones down the line and all that.
Yeah. This is such a great segue, because I get asked a lot of times, what's the best model? Like, what is the best model for whatever you're doing? Like, if it's creating an email, creating an ad, analyzing some data, whatever it is. And I've kind of come to this conclusion. I'm curious where you're at on this. Is there is really no best model. There's like several dimensions to this. So the one dimension is, how do you want to work with the model? Do you want it to be autonomous and do the behind the scenes and not really have any conversation with it. There's also the job that's actually being done. Like models perform better at certain things than others. And then there's also the speed and price piece of it too. So the way I've kind of been formulating is when I think about a team, you have teammates that are good at certain things. So like I would have people that I know, man, this person's a killer designer in this particular way. Anytime I have something, I'm going to go use that person for this. I kind of think about models the same way. Like I may have a model I really love for writing copy, but it's awful at doing any sort of data analysis. And when I try to mix those two, I get all kinds of like random numbers because they can't even do basic math. But it's great at like taking my language. And it's hard for a lot of people, especially people I would say that don't really understand like the inner workings of these AIs, to understand that. And I've been trying to think a lot about how we can articulate that better, both in our product and even as like even as people. I'm curious where your head's at on all that, because do you see some of the same things? Are you kind of formulating the same ideas in your head?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think one of the most common conversations that we have with brands is honestly, it's the doubt, right? It's the doubt of AI.
Yep.
It's not even like advanced stuff. I mean, it's one of those things of like oftentimes, I think you'd even be surprised the number of times that I talk with a brand, and even just on copywriting, right? Call it like one of the most like fundamental and probably like basic or easiest things for AI to do. The number of brands that are like, oh no, AI can't write copy, like it can't write the kind of copy that we need for our brand because
Right.
our brand is too unique or what have you, and that's the going in assumption. So we're not even talking like, hey, generate for me an amazing static ad or an email or UGC video, so stuff that gets much more complex, but just something as simple as like write copy for my landing page, right? Most of the time when we talk with a brand, like they've tried ChatGPT and the results were terrible. And they're like, oh, well, see, so like it doesn't work.
Exactly.
And I think it's because of exactly what you're saying, where the expectation is, oh, well, ChatGPT, like it's everybody knows about it, so it's the best at everything. And I think earlier on in sort of the AI cycle, so to speak,
that was true.
Which realistically isn't that old, right? It's like maybe a year
Yeah.
or two old now.
Yeah.
But like early on, that was more true.
Mm-hmm.
But now we're very much at the point where we have like what I personally sort of roll out as like our tier list, right? Where it's like if you want to do copywriting, like if you go to ChatGPT 5, yeah, it's probably going to be really bad at copywriting because like that's not one of the things that it's great at. If you want to do analysis, then ChatGPT 5 thinking is really good analysis, better than what Claude is good at. But Claude's really good at copywriting. The same thing like if you go to ChatGPT 5 and you want to do image generation and use it for that, you're going to get frustrated because it's not going to follow instructions. It's going to make up an alien language and all the text that you see. Like you're going to have you're going to ask it to make a couple edits and it's going to botch the whole thing and you're going to get super annoyed and then you're going to want to throw your computer out the window. Whereas like if you go to Gemini Nana Banana, that's the best model out there and you're going to be super impressed. So It's a long way of saying yes, like in many of the conversations that, that I have with brands. And I think even as we see brands using our product and we sort of auto select the best model for the job, I think we're going to continue to see this situation where like, there's going to be more, there's going to be models more tuned to each individual job, right? The same way that like Google now has Nano Banana, which is an image model, and that's different than their 2.5 Pro model for deeper analysis. And I think we're going to start to see that from more and more of these large companies and smaller ones, where these models get fine-tuned, kind of to your point, like instead of this large super intelligence into this, one huge blob of stuff,
Yep.
it becomes, how do you create like the best like designer model or the best writer model or that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to follow up on there. Like one of the things that I struggle with is, man, this is so true in pretty much any industries, but I think copywriting's like maybe the right one to talk about here. If I look at some copywriting that AI wrote and I go, oh, that's not great, that doesn't feel good. And then you try to dig into like, why doesn't that feel good? Like, what's wrong with it? Like, what are the things that you would change? It's hard for people to actually even articulate that. And part of me wonders, yeah, I mean, I do think there's probably some validity that certain AI is really bad at copyright. 100% agree with that. But I also think there are times that you could probably take that same text, say it came from a human on your team, and people would be like, "Oh, this is fine. This is great. Good. Yeah." So it's like, I think there's like this these stages that we need to get through to actually be like AI accepting. Know that it's not perfect. Know it's going to make mistakes. Be there to kind of guide it. but get out of the it's bad because it's AI sort of mindset. And and sometimes AI is bad. Don't get me wrong. Like it sometimes it can, and you should be able to be like, oh yeah, that's totally garbage. It's doing something it shouldn't do. But like really, it's about how do you harness that tool that you now have to actually make the AI be bad less percent of the time to be able to get yourself to be more efficient. So anyway, thinking about that, have you thought much about like how there's like that AI doubt phase? Like how do we help people, especially in a place where they're looking at like copywriting? They're like, oh, it's not as good. I've really debated about like blind tests to see if people could actually pick out like what is AI and what isn't AI, and see if like things like that, and just to try to get people to open their mind about it. I'm curious, have you thought about that or ran into that same situation?
Yeah, I mean it's interesting, right? Because if you there was a study that was put out recently by OpenAI, and it's actually on this very thing, and it showed that, again, it's kind of trended over time, but it shows that when you take an expert with an average of 14 years of experience, and you put in front of them blind test, right? If you put in front of them two different results, one AI and one human, right? And again, they've got 14 years of experience, and these are kind of more like expert required tasks. I'd say 47% of the time they chose, AI won 47% of the time, which means that 53% of the time, right? Humans won. I mean, that's almost a coin flip, right?
Yep.
So to your point, what's kind of wild is like when you do a blind test, like AI is getting to the output quality, right? To the success rate, where if you take a 14-year expert and put it in front of them, like they're almost guessing effectively, whether or not it was a human that did it, an AI that did it. And I think, I think like while that's true, like, I still think we've probably got years of trust that has to be built,
For sure.
where people begin to, where people even begin to go, okay, like, in reality, like, is this pretty close to what I would have done? Okay, let me put that out the door. And I think some of it's a fear factor. Like in my mind, a lot of times when talking with different brands and even agencies, there's this like fear element, and I think that plays into it too, where they're going, oh my gosh, well, like if it can do copywriting as good as I can, like what do I do? And I don't know. I mean, we know we've talked about this before, but in my mind, as humans, it's like the productivity factor. Like it's one of those things of like rarely do you see a human when faced with a situation where they can get more done, where they're like, you know what, as opposed to making my company more successful, I'm gonna go sit on my hands and just let it completely coast, right? And so I think there's like a lot of those kind of emotions that get tied up in it in terms of like if you did a blind test, and somebody didn't realize that they were picking AI again, and if they had realized it, would they have chosen it? Like that we definitely see that from a trust factor, but I don't know, I think it's just going to take time to rebuild that trust. Build that trust.
And it sort of kind of goes back to what we were talking about before, where like certain models are good at certain things, so that also hurts some of the trust because in our product today, like we have amazing data, and the way we do this, I know this is like getting a little bit too in the weeds. We kind of build the context. We build the context for you that you need for your brand to get the best thing possible. And we tune that constantly. But there are issues where certain AI is just awful at math. Like literally like third grade level math, right? And no matter how much you try to like help it to understand that, like it tries to add some numbers together, it does it wrong, whatever. And when you see that as a customer, it becomes this thing where it's like, oh, well, AI is stupid. Like it can't even add, these numbers together to tell me the exact thing. And we've got a lot of tooling in place to make that way less diminished. But it is like a trust thing, right? Because it is a thing where, if it's telling me something that's not true, like how can I trust it? And to me, it goes back to like you, the human, is the person that should be the architect of what's happening. So I like to, somebody gave this to me, and I'm trying to remember, but if you think about yourself as the reasoning behind it, and your value is not writing the copy, it's figuring out the strategy and kind of the high level direction. I akin it to like if you're a captain on a boat and you're like, we're going that way, and here's like high level what we need to do. You just use these tools to get you in that direction. It can make you so much more efficient.
Absolutely.
I don't know. Does that resonate with you too, Nathan? Like, is that?
Yep. Yeah, for sure. And I think, a great example of that, and it even kind of goes to your point too on the model side, where it's like we're past the point where if you're actually wanting to use AI to accelerate anything that you're doing, like it's past the point where you can just sit on ChatGPT and call yourself being AI forward or expect to be
100%.
producing the best result. And a simple example of this is I was talking with with a brand operator, last week in San Diego, and we were talking about images, right? And actually we were talking about part of the Raylion platform, right, is we help, we're able to generate images for emails and everything else using existing products and so on. And this particular operator, they were saying, oh, well, our products are really, basically they're like, we've tried AI image generation and it just doesn't work.
Yep.
And they're saying it's because their products have a lot of patterns. It's got sort of complexity to the texturing, of it and that sort of stuff. So they're saying, it just doesn't work for us. And honestly, and I bet him, I was like, look, I'll tell you what, if I can generate, fully AI, an image of your product, right? A variation of one of your products, and you can't, and you can't tell that there's any blemishes, you need to try our product. And you can do it for free, but you have to try our product. And he's like, done. Because he had said oh, I've tried this and this and this and this. And the reality is a lot of the models that he used were not good. It was ChatGPT 4.0, which used to be great, but in terms of when there wasn't anything else, but now it's not. So, I took one of their products, dropped it into the Raylion product. I created 2 variations in 30 seconds or so. I sent it to him, and he was blown away, floored. And he was just like, are you sure this is AI generated? It was that good. And it's because of, one, the context that we put in the product, but it's also selecting the right model. And I think that's part of why when it's when you think about, okay, can you just sit and use the same generic model for everything? You really can't. I mean, you can, but you should not expect that your results are going to be that quality, to where somebody's going, oh my gosh, this is actually making a difference and it's saving me time, versus, oh, well, I might as well just jump into Figma because this thing's so far off.
Yeah, and I hope one of the things that we can kind of do here is also help people know what models to look at. So Nano Banana, which is Gemini 2.5 Flash Image or something, I think it's called.
That's right.
We call it Nano Banana because that was the private name. So if you're not familiar, that was the name before release. So we got early access to it and all that stuff. It was really cool. I actually I love the name Nano Banana. I wish they would have just kept that, to be honest. But yeah, so to your point though, the model you choose matters a lot. It really does. And I do think if you follow the coding space, the engineering space, because that's probably on the forefront of a lot of this. What's happening now is models are starting to get tuned for particular things in the coding world. And that's inevitably going to happen in the marketing world. So, if you build your entire ecosystem around just ChatGPT, that is dangerous, because 6 months from now, we don't know who's going to be in. It's going to change so much in 6 months. It already has. And at some point, we're going to tail off. But it's just really important to build your ecosystem around, build the harness to, in whatever you're doing with your e-commerce brand, to be able to work in any particular AI, whether that's Sonnet 4 or Gemini 2.5 Pro. Some people love that. Or some of the more the newer models like Quinn 3 Max, I think, is also an interesting one. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I just think it's important to think about it from that perspective. Don't hinge yourself to a single model and build everything around it, because they're going to update it or it's going to be gone, and then nothing's going to, you just have to be careful about all that.
No, I agree. And honestly, I'd say this is part of why, you kind of mentioned it's part of why being able to select the right tools, whether it's a Raylion tool or not, I think being able to select the right tools that don't force you to adhere to a specific model, is so important. That's and I'd say that's one of the benefits of, and I'm not personally a fan of N8N, but I think that is one of the benefits of platforms like a Relevance or an N8N is 100%. You can kind of set up the general workflow, and then you can more easily swap out which model that you're using.
Love that. Yeah.
So now I think in general, I think those are completely overrated. That's a whole topic for a different episode. But I do think a benefit that they bring is, instead of having to be beholden to ChatGPT in the custom GPT that you did, where suddenly, oh no, Claude's way better. Now you're stuck with this custom GPT and ChatGPT, and you're like, well, how do I move this thing over to Claude and so on? You have that whole mess, which we see often, at least in the case of a tool like an N8N or others. You can go and say, cool, well, let me just take all this context that I have and point it at something different, and you're not stuck in a situation where it's going to take you hours to try to move things over every single time there's a better model. So
yep. Yeah, totally agree. And I think we're getting to the end here. Is there any other topics or things, Nathan, that's on your mind that you'd want to bring up before we end it out?
I think one thing, there was also a release of something called GLM 4.6, I think it was.
Yep.
I think a lot of folks sort of only know about the universe of Claude, ChatGPT, and Google, right?
Yep.
Or really OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google, right? I think it'd be awesome to have you kind of share. I mean, I know you've gone deep in GLM 4.6. Like what is it? Like what have you seen around it? Is it even helpful for brands to look at? I know Quinn's another one as well. But yeah, I would love kind of your take there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great point. There's a whole ecosystem of models that I'd be willing to bet the majority of people haven't heard of. So GLM 4.6 just came out. It's an update to GLM 4.5. The biggest update there is the size of its context window. We could get into the technicals of that, but basically you can think about that about how long its conversation can actually be before you have to start dropping some of the information. Now, GLM 4.5 for me is like one of the better like designer models on the market. This doesn't mean like creating images. This means like if you're designing, if you're like building HTML for an email, it does like a really good job at that. And now these models are open source. So what's really great about them, well, GLM 4.6 in particular, is you even though it's made in China, they're actually hosted in US infrastructure, and you can actually hit them, and some of them have really good speeds, at very good prices too, and they all have different personalities. So this goes back to what we were talking about before, where like every model might be a different like person on your team, or person's the wrong word, but bot on your team. Quinn 3 Max, for example, love that. I feel like it's very creative. So when I'm looking at like different subject lines or video titles, like I love going to Quinn 3 Max and saying, hey, give me 20 ideas that are curiosity inducing, blah, blah, blah. And then it gets my wheels going and I can kind of tune it. I find like just getting the different variety from these models is actually really worth it. And what's really fascinating is for the longest time, it was just OpenAI. And I would say most people that are probably watching this only know of OpenAI. Then we've got Sonnet, which is, a lot of people don't even think about that outside of the coding world, but that's starting to get more traction, I'd say, in content creation. We have Google, which some people like that, but it seems to be a very polarizing thing. People either love it or they hate it. Right. But no one really in e-commerce that I think of like thinks about Kimi K2, Quinn, GLM. But there's some like really powerful models there that would be worthwhile trying out to see how it, like if you like the personality of it, if you like the way it does the analysis of what you're trying to do. I would recommend, like, if you're trying to do something, run it in 3 or 4 different models, see which one you actually enjoy the best, and then remember to like pay attention to how you're prompting, because every model can respond to that very differently. But yeah, I don't know, Nathan, have you had a chance to try GLM 4.6?
I have not. That's why I was curious. I saw that it dropped.
Yeah.
And I didn't even get a chance to try 4.5, and I know that you'd spent a lot of time in it. So that's where I personally was just, I wanted to get the quick update on 4.6 to see like if it was worth me jumping in and trying it out and
yeah.
all that.
So Nathan's definitely more on like the context. Like I would look at something and be like, oh, that copywriting looks great. Like I'm not that great at telling it. But I will say GLM 4.5, 4.6. There's a very creative model. It's great at design. It's really good at just navigating and following instructions. So I like that a lot. It has some of the same. Quinn 3 Max, on the other hand. Now that one's actually a good analysis model, so it can it can dig into data a little bit better and that type of stuff. So, and the price of some of these things are so cheap. Like we're talking, 1/10 the price of the big ones like Claude 4. So, and sometimes faster too. So again, keep your options open. I would recommend, maybe doing like a cool tier list, or talking like actually going through and doing side-by-side comparisons one day would be kind of cool. Be like, all right, let's take all the models that we know of and like let's give them the same prompt, and let's take a look at like 3 different versions of each of those, and like how do we kind of rate those? 'Cause some of that's subjective, some of it, I think we can concretely decide like, oh, this is crap or this is good. So
right. That'd be fun. That'd be really fun.
It would be. All right. Well, Nathan, this has been fun, man. This episode 1 of what will be the #1 podcast focused on AI in the e-com marketing space. Anyway, let us know comments. Like, let us know like what you'd like to hear. If there's topics that are on your mind, we do plan to bring guests in periodically too. So if you have any guests that you'd like to recommend, we'd be happy to talk about that. We're really looking for people that are AI forward, that are doing things in the atmosphere right now in the market. And then have a great conversation. Anything to close out, Nathan?
No, this was fun. I'm looking forward to doing the next one. So to your point, we'll do these twice a month. And honestly, man, a big part of it is we spend so much time in this stuff ourselves, building our own internal tools at Raylion to do it. like building software that brands and agencies use, where they actually get to automate the brand or automate, parts of their agency, every day. That there's enough conversation at these conferences where, like, you know what, we need to get more real, like, actionable, good data out there, and kick all the hype to the side and just sort of keep it real.
Yep.
So yeah, Adam, I think to your point, if this has been fun, like if we want to drop comments, it'll be great to kind of see, like, what are other things that's worth covering, so we can make sure that we're making this as useful as possible.
Yeah, don't just glaze either. Like, if you disagree with something, I love that. We learn a lot from it. Doesn't hurt any of our feelings. Like, if you're like, GPT-5 is the greatest thing ever for copywriting, love to hear that and love to actually understand how you're using it that way. Just an example. All right, let's call it there, Nathan. Till next time, take care, everybody. See ya. Peace out.